Maya Rodriguez stood in the arrivals terminal at LAX, clutching a crumpled sign that read, Alexander Chen, in her sister's rushed handwriting. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as travelers rushed past her like a river flowing around a stone. She shouldn't have been there. This was supposed to be Emma's job. Her sister, the professional driver who never missed a pickup. But Emma had called an hour ago, voice thick with tears, begging Maya to take this one assignment. Their mother had fallen, the hospital was calling, and Emma couldn't be in two places at once. So Maya, still in her paint-stained jeans from her art studio, had driven straight to the airport with nothing but her sister's instructions and a prayer that she wouldn't mess this up. She had no idea that holding that sign would change everything. If this story already has you curious, please hit that like button, drop a comment below telling me what you think will happen next, and subscribe to Kindness Pulse for more heartwarming stories that remind us of the beautiful surprises life brings. Your support means the world. The man who approached Maya looked nothing like she'd imagined. He moved through the crowd like someone used to being watched, yet somehow completely alone. He was younger than expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that fell slightly across his forehead and eyes that held a weariness money couldn't buy. His suit probably cost more than her rent, but it was wrinkled from the long flight, and there was something vulnerable about the way he carried his single leather bag, as if he was used to traveling light because he had nowhere that truly felt like home. When his eyes met hers and registered the sign, something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe. He walked toward her with careful politeness that comes from years of maintaining emotional distance. Maya's heart hammered as she smiled, trying to channel her sister's professional confidence. Mr. Chen? Welcome to Los Angeles. I'm Maya. I'll be driving you today. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice softer than she expected, tinged with an accent that suggested he'd spent his childhood somewhere far from California. There was something in his eyes, a flash of loneliness so profound it made Maya's breath catch. The drive started in silence. Maya navigated through airport traffic while Alexander sat in the back seat, his attention fixed on his phone, though she suspected he wasn't really reading anything. 20 minutes in, he finally spoke. I don't usually do this, he said quietly. Talk to drivers, I mean. But you seem different. More real somehow. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm not usually a driver, she admitted before she could stop herself. The words tumbled out. About Emma, about their mother, about how she'd left her art studio mid-canvas to help her sister. She talked about things she never shared with strangers, and somehow it felt natural. Alexander listened with an intensity that made her feel like every word mattered. Then he started talking too, about how he'd built his tech company from nothing, how success had cost him every meaningful relationship, how he'd just come from his father's funeral in Shanghai, where he'd realized he was surrounded by employees and business associates, but not a single friend. He'd been flying back to Singapore but had an unexpected layover and decided on impulse to visit Los Angeles, a city where no one knew his name or his net worth. Wait, Maya said suddenly, her heart beginning to race. Singapore? But you're supposed to be going to Pasadena. She pulled over, hands shaking as she grabbed her sister's note. The flight number was different from the one on Alexander's luggage tag. They stared at each other as the truth crystallized. Wrong Alexander Chen, wrong pickup. A mistake that should never have happened. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I picked up the wrong person. Maya's face burned with embarrassment. And the actual Alexander Chen your sister was supposed to get is probably wondering where his ride is. He finished. But he was smiling now. A real smile that transformed his entire face. But what if we don't fix it just yet? What followed was the most unexpected day of Maya's life. They drove aimlessly through Los Angeles, two strangers who'd found each other through impossible odds. Alexander insisted on seeing the city through her eyes. She took him to her favorite taco stand in Boyle Heights where they sat on plastic chairs, and he laughed. Really laughed, for what he said was the first time in months. They walked through the arts district, and Maya found herself explaining her painting philosophy, how she tried to capture moments of unexpected beauty that people usually overlooked. At her studio, Alexander stood before her unfinished canvas titled Waiting. It showed a solitary figure in an airport, surrounded by movement but fundamentally alone. That's how I felt, he said quietly. Before today. The truth came out in whispers as the afternoon sun painted the studio golden. Alexander talked about the pressure of running a company valued at $300 million, how every relationship felt transactional, how he'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about his thoughts rather than his bank account. Maya shared her own story, the divorce that had shattered her confidence, the slow rebuilding of herself through art. "I think the universe makes mistakes that aren't really mistakes," Maya said as they sat on her studio floor. "Maybe we were supposed to meet exactly this way." Alexander reached for her hand and the touch felt like coming home. "I've spent 10 years building an empire," he said, "but I've never felt as successful as I do right now, sitting here with you." Before we wrap up this beautiful story, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who believes in destiny, and subscribe to Kindness Pulse for more incredible true stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next heartwarming tale. 6 months later, Maya stood in that same airport terminal, but everything was different. She wasn't holding a sign this time. She was waiting for Alexander to return from Singapore, where he'd been finalizing something he said would change both their lives. When he emerged from the crowd, his face lit up the moment he saw her, and he pulled her into his arms like a man who'd finally found his home. In his pocket was a small velvet box, and in his heart was a certainty that the best things in life happen when we're brave enough to embrace the beautiful accidents that change everything. The lesson that day taught both of them was simple but profound. Sometimes the wrong turn leads you exactly where you're meant to be. Loneliness isn't a permanent state. It's just the moment before someone unexpected walks into your life and reminds you that connection, real connection, is always worth the risk. And that the universe has a way of bringing together two souls who need each other, even if it takes a case of mistaken identity at an airport to make it happen. Love doesn't always arrive the way we plan. Sometimes it arrives holding the wrong sign, at the wrong time in the most perfectly imperfect way possible.